Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now. The NFL just detonated a bombshell that nobody saw coming, and right at the center of this absolute explosion sits Deion Sanders, the Raiders ownership group, and a quarterback controversy that has every franchise in America holding their breath. This isn't just another rumor swirling through the league grapevine. This is a full-blown earthquake that's shaking the foundations of professional football, and when the smoke clears, the entire landscape of the AFC might look completely different. What started as whispers in executive offices has erupted into the most talked-about story of the season, and it all revolves around one question that's driving fans absolutely insane. Did the Las Vegas Raiders really make an earth-shattering offer for Shedeur Sanders that left even his legendary father speechless? Let's cut straight to the chaos because this story is wild from every possible angle. Deion Sanders, a man who doesn't throw around compliments casually, who built his entire career on swagger and confidence, who never sugarcoats anything, came out publicly praising the Las Vegas Raiders organization for showing what he specifically called unbelievable class. Think about that for a second. This is prime time we're talking about, a living legend who has seen everything the sport has to offer, and he's going out of his way to acknowledge how the Raiders handled discussions surrounding a potential blockbuster offer for his son Shedeur. When Deion speaks, people listen. When Deion praises another organization, the entire football world stops what they're doing and pays attention. The fact that he used those exact words, unbelievable class, sent shockwaves through social media, ignited debates on every sports talk show in America, and left analysts scrambling to decode what really happened behind those closed doors. Now, here's where this gets absolutely fascinating. The Raiders didn't just casually inquire about Shedeur Sanders like some team kicking tires during the offseason. According to multiple insiders who are connected deep within NFL circles, the offer they allegedly prepared was described as irresistible. That word alone tells you everything you need to know about how serious Las Vegas was about landing this young quarterback. We're not talking about a standard trade proposal with a couple of draft picks thrown around. We're talking about the kind of package that makes general managers sweat. The kind of deal that keeps ownership groups up at night debating whether they should pull the trigger, the kind of blockbuster move that reshapes franchises for the next decade. When you hear the term irresistible in NFL trade discussions, your mind immediately races to combinations of multiple first-round picks, established star players, future draft capital, and maybe even roster swaps that completely alter the competitive balance of the conference. The Cleveland Browns find themselves in an absolutely pressure-packed situation right now because Shedeur Sanders has transformed from a promising young prospect into one of the most valuable commodities in professional football. Every snap he takes gets dissected by analysts. Every throw gets debated by fans. Every decision he makes on the field becomes a referendum on his future potential. And now, with another franchise reportedly making such an aggressive move to acquire him, the Browns organization is facing a nightmare scenario. Do they double down on their investment in Shedeur and make absolutely certain he understands he's their franchise cornerstone? Or do they at least entertain the conversation when another team comes calling with the kind of offer that could potentially rebuild their entire roster? That's the tightrope Cleveland is walking right now, and one misstep could haunt them for years. What makes this situation even more explosive is understanding exactly who the Las Vegas Raiders are as an organization. This franchise has never been afraid to make bold moves. From their iconic draft decisions that changed football history to their willingness to take chances on players other teams wouldn't touch, the Raiders have always operated with a swagger that matches their rebellious identity. They don't rebuild quietly in the shadows. They don't play it safe and hope things work out. When the Raiders want something, they go after it aggressively, and the entire league knows it. That's exactly why this story feels so believable, so realistic, so potentially game-changing. The Raiders pursuing Shedeur Sanders with a massive offer isn't some far-fetched fantasy cooked up by draft analysts with too much time on their hands. This fits perfectly with the DNA of an organization that thrives on making headlines, taking risks, and swinging for the fences. But here's the twist that nobody anticipated, the detail that transformed this from just another trade rumor into a full-blown sensation. Deion Sanders didn't just acknowledge that the Raiders showed interest in his son. He specifically praised how they conducted themselves throughout the entire process. According to his comments, which were carefully worded but incredibly meaningful, the Raiders operated with professionalism, transparency, and respect. In a league where backroom negotiations often turn cutthroat, where teams leak information to create leverage, where organizations sometimes play dirty to get what they want, the fact that Deion felt compelled to publicly acknowledge how classy the Raiders were speaks volumes. It suggests this wasn't some desperate, haphazard attempt to poach a young quarterback. This was a calculated, strategic, respectful approach by a franchise that understands how to operate at the highest levels of professional sports. Think about what that means for a second. The Raiders could have leaked information to create public pressure on the Browns. They could have used back channels to generate buzz and force Cleveland's hand. They could have played hardball and made this messy. Instead, they apparently conducted themselves in a manner that impressed one of the most influential figures in football history. That level of professionalism is rare, and it's exactly what creates long-term relationships in this business. Even if this particular trade never materializes, the Raiders have now established themselves as a credible, respectful organization in the eyes of Deion Sanders and his camp. That's the kind of reputation that pays dividends down the road when future opportunities arise. The NFL community is absolutely losing its mind over this story, and for good reason. Analysts are taking hardline positions on whether Cleveland should even consider trading Shedeur. Former players are jumping into the debate, sharing their perspectives on what constitutes fair value for a young quarterback with franchise potential. Fans are engaged in heated arguments across every social media platform imaginable, with Browns supporters insisting their quarterback is untouchable, while Raiders fans are dreaming about what their offense could look like with Shedeur running the show. The conversation has consumed the entire football landscape, and it shows no signs of slowing down. Every new detail that emerges gets picked apart, analyzed, and debated by millions of people who are genuinely invested in how this saga unfolds. What's particularly interesting is how quickly this narrative shifted from rumor to legitimate possibility in the minds of fans and media members. That transformation happened the moment Deion Sanders praised the Raiders organization. His words carried weight that anonymous sources and insider reports never could. When a father publicly acknowledges that another team treated his son's situation with class and respect, it confirms that real conversations took place. It validates the seriousness of the interest. It transforms speculation into something far more tangible. Suddenly, this wasn't just draft analysts creating content during a slow news cycle. This was a genuine situation that involved real negotiations, real offers, and real discussions about the future of a young quarterback who could define the next era of NFL football. The symbolism of this potential move cannot be overstated. For the Raiders, acquiring Shedeur Sanders would represent far more than just adding a talented quarterback to their roster. This would be about creating a new identity for a franchise that's still searching for its next era of dominance. The Raiders haven't had a true franchise quarterback, someone who can carry the organization on his shoulders for a decade, since the prime years of Derek Carr. And even during those seasons, the team never quite reached the championship expectations that defined the franchise's legendary past. Bringing in Shedeur would give Las Vegas a new face, a new leader, a new marketing phenomenon in one of the most competitive entertainment markets on the planet. This is a city built on spectacle, on star power, on the ability to capture attention and hold it. Shedeur Sanders fits that blueprint perfectly. Meanwhile, the Browns are navigating an incredibly complex situation with their quarterback room. They're balancing the development timeline of a young player with immense potential against the pressure of winning now in a brutally competitive AFC North. They're dealing with constant scrutiny from a passionate fan base that's been waiting decades for sustained success. Every coaching decision gets magnified. Every rotation in practice becomes a talking point. Every public statement from the organization gets analyzed for hidden meanings. And now, with the knowledge that another franchise made such a strong play for their young quarterback, the pressure has amplified to an entirely new level. Cleveland must make absolutely certain they're developing Shedeur correctly, supporting him properly, and building an environment where he can reach his ceiling. What really drives the intrigue in this story is the uncertainty surrounding exactly what happened behind closed doors. Did the Browns immediately reject the Raiders' offer without hesitation? Did they actually sit down and debate the merits of accepting such a massive package? Did they counter with demands that were intentionally unrealistic to shut down the conversation? Or did they keep the door slightly open, acknowledging that under certain circumstances, they might be willing to discuss trade scenarios? We don't have definitive answers to those questions, and that ambiguity is exactly what keeps fans obsessed with this storyline. The unknown possibilities, the what-ifs, the alternate realities where this trade actually happens, those are the narratives that capture imagination and fuel endless debate. The business side of this situation is equally fascinating because young star quarterbacks represent far more than just on-field production. They drive revenue streams that extend throughout the entire organization. Jersey sales skyrocket. Ticket demand increases. Television ratings improve. National media attention follows. Corporate sponsorship opportunities multiply. A franchise quarterback creates a cultural phenomenon that impacts the financial health of the entire operation. The Raiders understand this intimately, especially operating in Las Vegas, where entertainment value directly correlates to business success. They need a quarterback who doesn't just win games but captures attention, generates buzz, and becomes appointment television. Shedeur Sanders possesses those qualities in abundance, which is precisely why the reported offer felt so massive. For Cleveland, the flip side of that equation is terrifying. Losing a young quarterback with star potential can set a franchise back years, maybe even decades. The Browns have experienced enough quarterback instability throughout their history to understand exactly how devastating it is when you don't have the right person running your offense. They've cycled through countless options, invested in high draft picks that didn't pan out, signed veterans who couldn't recreate past success, and watched division rivals dominate the conference with stable quarterback play. If Shedeur Sanders truly represents the answer to their long-term quarterback question, trading him would be organizational malpractice of the highest order, regardless of what package the Raiders offered in return. The timing of this story is also critically important because it reveals how dramatically quarterback evaluation has evolved across the NFL. Teams no longer wait patiently for young quarterbacks to prove themselves through 3 or 4 seasons before determining their long-term value. The modern league operates at a much faster pace. If a quarterback shows flashes of elite traits, poise under pressure, leadership qualities, and command of the offense, franchises immediately begin building around that player. The development curve has compressed, and the window for securing franchise quarterbacks before their value becomes prohibitive has narrowed considerably. That's why the Raiders allegedly moved so aggressively. They recognized the traits in Shedeur that suggest future stardom, and they understood that waiting another year or two would only make him exponentially more expensive to acquire. What makes Deion's praise so impactful is that it signals something beyond just a one-time inquiry. When you build a respectful relationship with a player's camp, when you demonstrate class and professionalism during negotiations, you create pathways for future conversations. Just because the Browns rejected the offer today doesn't mean this door is permanently closed. Circumstances change. Roster situations evolve. Coaching staffs get fired. Front offices get reshuffled. Organizational priorities shift. If the Raiders handled this situation with the kind of grace that impressed Deion Sanders, they've positioned themselves as a credible partner for any future discussions that might arise. That's strategic thinking at the highest level, and it's exactly how smart franchises operate in the modern NFL. The broader implications of this story extend throughout the entire league because it establishes a new benchmark for young quarterback value. If the rumors are accurate and the Raiders truly prepared a franchise-altering package for Shedeur Sanders, it sends a message to every other team in football. Young quarterbacks with high ceilings are no longer developmental projects you can afford to be patient with. They're immediate trade targets for aggressive franchises willing to mortgage significant assets to secure their services. That reality changes how teams approach drafting quarterbacks, how they structure rookie contracts, how they handle media narratives around young players, and how they protect their investments from poaching attempts by rival organizations. The entertainment factor of this entire saga cannot be ignored either because this is exactly the kind of storyline that transcends traditional football coverage and captures mainstream attention. A legendary father praising a rival organization for how they pursued his talented son creates a narrative that appeals to casual fans and hardcore football junkies alike. It's personal, it's dramatic, it's filled with uncertainty and possibility. It's the kind of story that generates conversation at workplaces, dominates social media feeds, and keeps people tuning in to see what happens next. The NFL thrives on these moments, these unexpected plot twists that remind everyone why professional football remains America's most popular sport. Another layer to consider is how this situation affects Shedeur Sanders himself. He's a young quarterback trying to establish himself in the most competitive league in the world, and now he knows that at least one other franchise values him highly enough to make a massive offer. That knowledge can be empowering, validating his belief in his own abilities and confirming that his talent is recognized throughout the league. But it can also create pressure and distraction. Does he start wondering if Cleveland truly believes in him long-term? Does he question whether the organization might actually consider trading him if the offer was big enough? Does he worry about his future stability with the franchise? These are psychological factors that can impact performance, and the Browns must now manage that dynamic carefully. The Raiders' perspective on this entire situation is equally intriguing because their aggressive pursuit of a franchise quarterback signals a fundamental shift in organizational philosophy. They're no longer content with slow, methodical rebuilds that take years to bear fruit. They want immediate impact. They want a spark that can transform their offense overnight. They want a player who can change the entire trajectory of the franchise. That mentality reflects the modern reality of professional sports in general and the NFL specifically. Fan patience is limited. Media scrutiny is relentless. Ownership groups demand results. Coaches need to win immediately or risk losing their jobs. In that environment, finding a franchise quarterback isn't a luxury you can postpone indefinitely. It's an urgent necessity that requires bold action. The chess match between these two organizations is absolutely fascinating to watch unfold. The Raiders made their move, reportedly offering something significant enough to catch Deion Sanders' attention and earn his public praise. The Browns responded by either rejecting the offer outright or at least maintaining their position that Shedeur isn't available at any price. But the game isn't over. The Raiders now know exactly how Cleveland values their young quarterback. They understand the Browns' organizational priorities. They've established a respectful relationship with Shedeur's camp. All of that information becomes valuable intelligence that can inform future strategy. Maybe they come back with an even bigger offer next offseason. Maybe they shift their focus to other young quarterbacks in the draft. Maybe they use this leverage to pivot in an entirely different direction. The possibilities are endless, and that's what keeps this story compelling. What's particularly remarkable about this entire saga is how it demonstrates the power of relationships in professional sports. Deion Sanders didn't have to publicly praise the Raiders. He could have remained silent. He could have deflected questions about trade rumors. He could have shut down the conversation entirely. Instead, he chose to acknowledge their professionalism, and that choice matters immensely. It suggests the Raiders weren't just throwing money around recklessly. They were operating with intention, with strategy, with an understanding of how to conduct business at the highest levels. That kind of organizational competence is what separates franchises that consistently compete for championships from teams that perpetually struggle to build sustainable success. The fan reaction to this story has been absolutely electric, and it reveals something important about how modern NFL audiences engage with their favorite teams. People aren't just interested in game results anymore. They want to understand the business decisions, the trade negotiations, the front office strategies, the behind-the-scenes drama that shapes their franchises. They want access to information that was once closely guarded by organizations. They want to feel like insiders, like they understand the chess moves happening at the highest levels of the sport. This story delivers exactly that kind of content, which is why it's dominated conversations across every platform imaginable. The pressure is now squarely on the Cleveland Browns to prove they made the right decision by keeping Shedeur Sanders. If he develops into the franchise quarterback they believe he can become, if he leads them to playoff success, if he validates their faith in his abilities, then rejecting whatever offer the Raiders made will look like brilliant organizational management. But if things go sideways, if the development timeline stalls, if Cleveland continues struggling to compete in a loaded AFC, then questions will inevitably arise about whether they should have at least considered the package Las Vegas was offering. That's the reality of high-stakes decision-making in professional sports. Every choice gets evaluated in hindsight, and mistakes get magnified exponentially. This entire situation also highlights a fascinating dynamic about quarterback value in the current NFL landscape. Teams are paying for potential more than production. They're betting on ceilings rather than floors. They're investing in traits that suggest future dominance rather than waiting for players to prove themselves through multiple seasons of elite performance. Shedeur Sanders represents that kind of upside. He possesses the physical tools, the mental processing speed, the leadership qualities, and the intangible charisma that franchise quarterbacks need. The fact that the Raiders reportedly made such an aggressive play for him confirms that their evaluation process identified those exact traits. The Las Vegas market presents unique opportunities for a franchise quarterback in ways that most NFL cities cannot match. This is a destination where athletes become celebrities, where star power translates directly into cultural influence, where the entertainment ecosystem amplifies every aspect of a player's brand. A quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, who already carries name recognition because of his legendary father, who understands how to navigate media attention, who possesses the confidence to thrive under intense scrutiny, would absolutely flourish in that environment. The Raiders understand this dynamic intimately, which is why their pursuit makes perfect strategic sense beyond just the football considerations. Meanwhile, the Browns must navigate the delicate balance between developing their young quarterback and managing external pressure from other franchises who clearly see his value. That's a tightrope walk that requires exceptional organizational communication, strong leadership from the coaching staff, and unwavering commitment from ownership. Any signs of internal discord, any hints of doubt about Shedeur's long-term future with the franchise, any whispers that the Browns might actually consider trade offers, those narratives can become self-fulfilling prophecies that damage relationships and create instability. The respect that Deion Sanders showed the Raiders organization might be the most important detail in this entire story because it establishes a foundation for future interactions. Professional sports is ultimately a relationship-driven business. The personal connections between agents, executives, coaches, and ownership groups shape trade negotiations, free agent decisions, coaching hires, and countless other transactions that define franchise trajectories. By handling this situation with class, by treating Shedeur and his camp with respect, by operating transparently and professionally, The Raiders have invested in a relationship that could pay dividends for years to come, regardless of whether this specific trade ever materializes. The NFL landscape is shifting dramatically, and stories like this one illuminate exactly how those changes are manifesting at the highest levels of the sport. Quarterback movement is happening faster than ever before. Young players are changing teams earlier in their careers. Franchises are making bold moves to secure their futures rather than waiting patiently for opportunities to develop organically. The Raiders' alleged offer for Shedeur Sanders fits perfectly within that paradigm shift, and it signals that other aggressive moves are likely coming from teams throughout the league who recognize that franchise quarterbacks are the ultimate competitive advantage in modern football. This story won't fade quietly into the background because too many stakeholders are invested in how it ultimately resolves. Browns fans want reassurance that their organization values Shedeur appropriately and won't even consider trading him. Raiders fans want to believe their franchise is aggressive enough to land a cornerstone quarterback who can lead them back to championship contention. Neutral observers are fascinated by the business dynamics, the relationship building, the strategic maneuvering that happens behind closed doors in professional sports. Everyone has a perspective, everyone has an opinion, and everyone wants to see what happens next. The ultimate question that drives this entire narrative is simple but profound. What would it actually take for the Cleveland Browns to trade Shedeur Sanders? That question haunts the franchise because even acknowledging it exists creates uncomfortable conversations. But the reality is that every player has a price. Every organization has a threshold where the offer becomes too massive to refuse. Every general manager must at least consider proposals that could fundamentally reshape their roster. The Raiders reportedly tested that threshold, and according to Deion Sanders, they did it with unbelievable class. Whether Cleveland ever reaches that point of seriously considering a trade remains unknown, but the fact that another franchise pushed them to even contemplate the question reveals just how valuable Shedeur has become.